time now for FOMO. The stock we're watching today is Nvidia. That had been the FOMO play of the year before it had entered correction territory, but it's getting some love today. Joining us now to discuss, we've got Caroline Woods, senior markets correspondent here on the Schwab Network, and of course the co-host of Next Gen Investing, Jenny Horne. Thank you so much for diving into this for us today. So Nvidia shares up a little, around 4% today. What's the trigger? What's behind this bullish sentiment returning to the stock?
A couple different things. As you said, shares are up about 4.3% right now, reversing earlier gains that pushed it into correction territory. Now officially positive on the week. Still down almost 2% for the month of December, though, which I think is notable because if you compare that to the stocks, for example, that's up about 5%. And some of the competitors, Broadcom is up about 44% this month. Marvell's up about 20% this month. Both of those actually notably lower today. So it seemed like the selling was pretty NVIDIA specific. Investors found some other chip stocks to love and to buy. That's changing today. NVIDIA, as I said, chipping away at those monthly losses. And as for the reason why, there could be potentially a few different reasons why. Potentially some dip buying. Of course, NVIDIA is about 12% away from all-time highs. There's also a Financial Times report, not sure if you saw that, Diane, that Microsoft bought twice as many NVIDIA chips as its largest rivals in the U.S. and China this year. They're reporting that, according to some of the data, that Microsoft bought 485,000 Hopper chips this year. NVIDIA's next biggest customer is Meta, which bought 224,000 Hopper chips. So demand clearly still there, but also some of Microsoft's competitors might have to go on a bit of a buying spree in order to catch up, which also could bode well for NVIDIA. So that could be a positive catalyst today. Yesterday, of course, there was the announcement of the latest Gen AI supercomputer, the Jetson Orion Nano Super developer kit. It packs more AI processing power, fits in the palm of the hand. It's about half the price as it was the previous kit at $249 and a lot more power. So there's that. And then there's also some positive analyst activity. Piper Sandler said NVIDIA is a best idea heading into 2025, saying we currently view NVIDIA as our top large cap pick in our coverage universe, given the company's dominant positioning in AI accelerators and the upcoming launch of the Blackwell architecture. So reiterated it as overweight. All of those things boding well for NVIDIA today. Shares up 4.4% right now.
All right. Well, some serious momentum there, and it sounds like the bulls are back when it comes to NVIDIA, at least for the day. We'll see if this continues.
And so I also wanted to mention, I mean, we're talking about some of that momentum obviously continuing here, that I think it's been a really interesting discussion, the way there's so much talk about Broadcom all of a sudden eating NVIDIA's lunch. And it's like, well, wait a second. First of all, this name, I was impressed by their earnings. I do think there's still a massive component of their legacy business that makes it different than NVIDIA. But I do think it's interesting that they have more and more affordability seen right now. So there's the thinking we could see this trade down effect with some of these companies perhaps going to a lower cost option like a Broadcom, and that's stealing NVIDIA's right now unrivaled market share. So we've been talking about the fact this has become a one-horse race for quite some time. I know AMD was at one point a formidable player in the space. It has not really looked as such in the back half of this year, but the Broadcom story I do think is interesting because as far as just flows go, I think that you have to look and say, maybe that's where the money has been going. Maybe it's not as maybe concerning of a pullback as headlines would read. I mean, a name that's still one of the top 3 best performers in the S&P 500 this year. I mean, NVIDIA is still up, 173%, I believe it stands right now. But the Broadcom story does it now, I think, pose an interesting discussion because we have been waiting for that rival to finally enter the space and what that looks like for NVIDIA.
Yeah, I mean, the money's definitely going there because if you take a look at Broadcom shares, they're up 43% in December alone and now 107% year to date. So I think that's notable. And I think that going into 2025, NVIDIA is not without its headwinds, right? There's not just increased competition from the likes of rivals like Broadcom that could be chipping away at market share. There's also this antitrust probe by China. There's just a higher bar in general in terms of revenue expectation. NVIDIA has been blowing it out of the water, every single time it reports quarterly results, but it makes for some tough comps as well. That all being said, I think that if you take a look at what analysts are saying, I mentioned Piper Sandler saying it's a best idea heading into 2025. There's still consensus that this is a buy heading into the new year. Citi was out with a note saying both Broadcom and Nvidia can coexist. Still very bullish in terms of thinking that there could be more momentum there. I saw Cantor Fitzgerald calling it a top pick for 2025. Nvidia, that is, saying we've highlighted ad nauseum our love for Nvidia, and we would expect the name to lead the Philly Semiconductor Index higher in 2025, as it has done for 4 of the past 5 years. So, love from Cantor Fitzgerald. And if you take a look, 90% of analysts rate Nvidia, a little more than 90% rate Nvidia as a buy. The median price target is 175, so almost 30% upside from where it's currently trading. And then if you take a look at Broadcom, interestingly enough, 90% rated as a buy as well, but the median price target is actually $200 a share, and it's currently trading about $32 ahead of that. So we might need to see some adjustments for that price target after earnings. It's had this huge run higher, so it seems like there can, be love for both.
Yes. And also it seems like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. In other words, when it comes to the Mag 7, you make the point about some of the bullish sentiment, the bullish notes coming out, essentially reiterating perspective. Analysts still largely in the buy camp when it comes to Nvidia. Bank of America had a note out yesterday as well saying they expect to continue to see outperformance when it comes to the Mag 7 for 2025. Now, they do predict a bust coming eventually, as we saw with, say, the dot-com bubble, and, they took it all the way back to 1929. So they went way back for that one, but it will certainly be one to watch, and you could see this as a buy the dip opportunity. Great analysis, Caroline. All right, that's our very own Caroline Wood, senior markets correspondent here on the Schwab Network.